And I remember one day she was following me really close. She was like 4. Everything I did, she was walking behind me. And I was at the age where I was a human jungle gym. And I wanted to say, stop, like get away from me. And I said, Emma, what are you doing? And she goes, I'm following behind you to learn how to be a woman. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is like the metaphor for everything. I need to remember this.
I'm really looking forward to sharing this episode with you. This is with Carla Birnberg. She is a lady that I have followed for almost a decade online, and she is absolutely incredible. In this episode, we talk about all things when it comes to unapologetic parenting. How do you navigate parenting a tween or a teenager with firm boundaries, but also freedom? How do you open up conversations about adoption? What is the process of adoption like as an adopted mom? And how do you start talking about those tough things with teenagers like alcohol and sex and drugs and relationships and all of those things which seem to be flooding into our children's lives earlier and earlier? Carla Birnberg is someone who has been an online entrepreneur, starting in the fitness industry, and then working her way through just basically sharing an unapologetic life. I hope that you enjoy this podcast because it's real, honest, reflective, and I think it helps all of us who are raising children, no matter what stage or age, really think about how do we want to have those conversations with our kids. Enjoy.
All right, Carla, you're someone who I adore.
I know. I'm so happy to be here.
So I met you online when you were Misfit.
I launched that in 2005. So I can't remember when we connected, maybe 2008.
7, 8, yeah. And I was in the midst of a horrible relationship. And I remember loving you because I didn't know it then, but I know now why. It's because you are so unapologetically you.
It's funny that you say that because I'm kind of in the midst of a career pivot, transition, whatever. And I was doing my resume for myself. And I thought, oh my gosh, I am all over the map. So someone's going to take this and be like, oh, she wrote for the newspaper. She owned a training studio. She blogged. But it was only, I stepped back and I thought, you know what? I've done different things, but in every single arena, I've done the same thing. I show up as authentic and flawed and create space for other people to do the same. I used to do that through the newspaper. I did it through personal training. And it made me realize that I do have consistency. The vehicle has just been different.
I love that. It's so funny you said that because I was literally in the security line at LAX, which is, like hell on earth. It's like 5 minutes of hell.
I haven't done any of that. I need to get on it and do any of the you know what I mean? Like the priority boarding or the whatever.
Yeah. I don't know what I need to get it sorted. But anyways, there's this kid there and he's like, oh yeah, I'm going back to Dartmouth or something. And I'm going to do I'm doing summer school so I can graduate faster. And then I'm going to go do a master's degree in something else. And then I'm going to go do like med school. And I looked at him and I'm like, honey, you need to go live. You need to not go do your master's degree. You need to go to Australia or Europe and like live 2 years of your life and like serve coffee and live on couches and just go have fun and then come back and do your master's. And he kind of looked at me and I'm like,
oh, you said that to him literally? Oh my gosh, that's great.
Yeah. I was like, I think the thing that I love about you is that you've lived unapologetically, but you've lived your life in lots of different ways. And I think that there's so much that you learn by living as opposed to reading a textbook and trying to master something that someone else says that makes you proficient at something, which goes into what I want to talk to you about today, which is motherhood. Because I met you online. I'm just going to I'll call her Emma. That's your daughter's name. She must have been a toddler.
She was tiny because I moved to Guatemala to live with her for like a week and then got stuck there. So she and I were there for 6 months. And when we came home, I was still working at the Austin American Statesman. And I used to be able to volunteer a lot. And I thought, now I'm tethered. And so I decided to start Misfit as a way to give away all the personal training knowledge that I had. So that was kind of like my volunteering. She was maybe 1.5 at the oldest.
Yeah, she was young. So you made the decision to adopt. You went to Guatemala. You get there. And then what happens?
Crazy pants. We decided to adopt. And now I look back and think how naive it was. But we thought we would adopt and then have a biological child because we thought everything will be so easy because she will know that she was a choice. it was not easy. But so I moved to Guatemala. I thought I was going down for a week and I got stuck there. I was really lucky because the statesman let me work remotely. It was amazing. And I think on some level, and I do think my still husband, we're separated, getting divorced, would agree, it really strengthened our bond together. The two of us. I moved down when she was 6 months because it was that critical period. And I took over custody from her foster. She was living with a couple. And she and I bonded. We lived there for 6 months. We would get up each morning thinking, is today the day the government's going to let us go home? And then we go to bed when it wasn't. So 6 months later, we came home. And I think it's like what any mother would say, but just the two of us, intense, 6 months, different country. It really bonded us in good and bad ways. Because we're like crack.
When you started, I mean, obviously, I think all of us as mothers, biological, adopted, etc. I think there's a lot of naivety around it. I mean, if we ever, Andrew and I was hell bent on not having another kid, but I've softened to it. So I think we might try next year. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I would have, 90% less of the crap I had the first time. I would be so different in my motherhood. How did you go into motherhood? What was your headspace in motherhood when you first had Emma, and how has that changed over the years?
I think, and I say this to people all the time, it's a gift when the child is adopted. And I don't think I'm unique in this. I could be, that I never look for any of my traits in her. It's like I entered into motherhood with no expectations. And it's been such a gift, from intellect to physical prowess to musical talents, any of it. It's been a really freeing space because I'm not constantly searching for myself or my husband, partner, whatever. But I remember looking for parenting books, as we all do. Before it happens, we're like, we need to read every damn thing. And I saw there are all these books on playful parenting. And I remember thinking, oh, that's weird. People need to be told that. And for some reason in that moment, it just clicked with me. I was already really clear, as you are, and most of the people we know are, she's not going to be my friend. I have my friends and I'm her parent. Yeah. But just for some reason, seeing all those books out there made me realize the importance of play in the relationship. And I think I've just kept that threaded through even until now. I mean, she's 12 and a half, which I can't believe.
I can't believe
still are so playful. I know, I can't believe it. I mean, we have navigated getting her period, boys, separation, divorce. It has been, she's so wise. I mean, it's been really, really good. And every morning I wake up and think, because I do my manifestation journaling first thing, I am so grateful for this, or praying, whatever kind of person you are, because every day I think we're still close. She's still communicating with me. Every day it lasts. I'm so grateful.
I would love to talk to you about that, because one of the things that I admire about how you have parented is that you have been, I would almost say, bluntly open with her. I guess blunt in a really good way, as in it's very, I wouldn't even say it is transparent, but I think it's even more, I wouldn't say radical. I just feel like you've been so open with her throughout the whole time that she has been alive, from what I can see, obviously. I mean, we don't live near each other, but and you're very open online as well. One of the things I admire is one aspect is you've been very open and honest with her about her adoption and her identity, and allowing her to explore that. And the second one that I love that you have done is you've given her ways to communicate with you in a really non-judgmental space. I think you guys had like letters or journals that you were using for a while. So I would just like for you to explore maybe the facets of how you've been open with your daughter and created a relationship with her that has been multifaceted, but also really respectful of the boundaries that she needed.
Yes, it's interesting you bring that up. And I think, again, I don't know if it goes back to the fact we chose to adopt, but from the very beginning, and this has been her use of words in any realm, but it's so clear in the adopted realm, that she will talk about, now she'll probably say birth mom because she's older. But when she was younger, I didn't care. She's so articulate. And she would say, I have a hole in my heart and it's where my mom should be. And I never focused on semantics. And I think I didn't know what I was doing at that point. It never hurt my feelings because I was cognizant of the fact, first of all, I was her quote mom or whatever you wanted to say. But it's like if you have a second child, the love expands. There's enough room for everyone. But I think by not correcting her words there, and I had friends, well-meaning, saying, you should probably tell her to say birth mom, that kind of thing. By not jumping in and correcting her, she's always been really free with her words, because we talk a lot about, now that she's older, but even earlier, intent. She never had any intent to hurt my feelings by saying I have a space where my mom should be. And so we were always really, really open. And it It's served us and it hasn't. I mean, I know there's some back and forth about whether you search for them sooner rather than later. And we did choose to look sooner because of the shortened lifespan in the country she's from. But it fell apart the night before we were supposed to meet her birth mother. She pulled out and we ended up not going. And it was that foundation of openness. I just think we need to trust our kids. I handed it all over to her. Do you still want to go to Guatemala? No, I don't want to go anymore. Okay. And we talked about it. It's that element of trust. I hear her and I trust her. I mean, I don't hand the reins over in every realm, but it's almost like I let her make the decisions of what she thinks she's capable of. And if I think, okay, let's try this, then my next question to myself is, how can I set her up for success to attempt that, whatever that is? And, you know, we were talking earlier about Esther Crawford, whom I adore. Yeah. And she and I think are the same in that aspect. Like I'm a strict parent. I think the tattoos confuse people, but I'm pretty strict. She's not allowed to do some things her friends can do, but she's allowed to do a lot they're not allowed to do yet because I trust her decision-making because I started this so long ago.
I feel the same. Like, it's so interesting. One of the things that we'd emailed about was like boundaries. And you'd said, you know, there's boundaries, but then there's also this idea of allowing children to take risks. Like Esther, she's in Europe at the moment that we're recording this, and the kids left their swimming suits. And so she said, here, $25, 25 euros, whatever. And the two of you have to go together and you need to go down to the swimsuit shop and you need to sort it out because I'm not going to, and I'm not going to save you. And I think what's happened in parenting is that we've lost the ability. We're so afraid of our children getting hurt or getting abducted or getting killed, or like, because that's what's been sensationalized, is that we don't allow them to take risk anymore.
No, and I love the quote, and it's supposed to be for us, of worrying is literally betting against ourselves, but we project that to our kids. It's like, I mean, so much on the other side of fear is freedom. But I think when I start to let her do something and I want to worry about it, I'm betting against her. She's capable. And now I'm getting excited. But it's really been recently that I've been able to see, and it's the well-worn trite adage of trust in the foundation you've created.
Yes.
And they say, you know, whatever you create from 1 to 6 really is the foundation. And as she gets older, I mean, we had an experience recently, and this blew my mind because I think, see her as a baby. It's like that commercial where the dad sees a girl getting married and she's like 6.
Yeah.
But she said to me, I picked her up from Wendy's and she got in the car and she said, Mom, when we were walking to Wendy's, all my friends started getting high. It was like an after school special. And I said, they did. And in the moment on the inside, I'm kind of panicking. How do I handle this? I've been preparing for this for so long. And she said, I didn't do it. I said no. And I said, okay. And then in the moment, and again, I don't know if this is the right response or not, I did say, you know, I'm glad you said no, whatever. But I thought that's not the act I want to praise. I want to let her know, no matter what, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
And you know, if you had said yes and regretted it, I would have come and picked you up and brought you home and just held you. Yeah. Because I thought I need to keep the communication going. I was proud that the foundation had stuck. Mm. But it all happened so fast. It's like 5 minutes ago, she was in 5th grade playing with Barbies.
And now she's getting stoned on the way to, or potentially on the way to Wendy's. And you're like,
and it's that communication. And it goes back to what you had said. And it started small. Like when she was littler, we used to do what I called bubble parenting. And so she knew when she went in the bubble, she could say anything and it wouldn't leave the bubble. Like we would figure it out in there and then we would leave, and I wouldn't. God bless my mom. She would have heard something in the bubble and walked around the rest of the day like, I'm just mad because you did. So there'd be none of it. And she used to use it joking around. So I think the first time she went in, she wasn't allowed, obviously, to say bad words. And so she'd say, Mom, I need to go in the bubble. Okay, we'd go in and she'd say, you're fucking awesome. And then she'd go out of the bubble. So at first it was that, but then she really used it for the real thing. She had done something wrong. She didn't know what to do. And we went in there and we figured it out together. And she knew that I wouldn't get mad at her. It was a space where I would just help.
Yeah. It's called emotional resiliency.
Yes.
You know, it's like what we're teaching our children is being resilient. And like through my recovery, what I realized was that I was a 35-year-old woman with 2 master's degrees and I had no coping mechanisms. Because the coping mechanisms that we're given kind of in modern day society is escaping on Facebook or social media. It's working to outwork our own sense of internal inadequacy. It's shopping, it's binge eating, it's, you know, changing everything about the way that we look, which is fine in some circumstances. But we're not actually, what you talked about all the way in the beginning was, what's the intent? Like the intent of parenting to me, and we could talk about this, is I want to raise a child who is able to see herself as unapologetically herself, but also compassionate and responsible. You know, I always said to Andrew, she's
responsibility.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I want her to be able to own her choices. And it's like, it's so true. So one of the things that like we have done that's different than a lot of people is we allowed her to, she sleep regressed. So she was in our room for about 6 to 7 months, but she could only be on the floor. So we brought her mattress in, and every night I would say, would you like to go back into your room? No. And so the whole point for me doing that was having boundaries of like, you can stay in our room, but it's on your bed.
Yes.
So that was a negotiation, right? Because she didn't feel safe. And I feel like sometimes we force children into situations where it's like, well, they're 3, so they should be in their room, or they're 4, so they should be doing this, as opposed to, is this actually safe for them? And are we having conversations to say, do you feel safe?
It is that, exactly. And that feels different for each kid, each human.
Yeah. So when the moment that we start to like project outwardly, like, well, you should be here, then we're not teaching them how to listen to their own internal compass, which is exactly what you just said of your daughter was in a situation where she goes, I don't feel safe, or this doesn't feel aligned.
Yes.
And she had the ability then to communicate that outward.
We accidentally shame them. We tell you have to go back to your bedroom. And then it's amazing to me when you see the adult result of that. It just never works. That's shame.
It doesn't work. Yeah, that's exactly it. It's being really conscious as a parent about boundaries and shame. Like, it's such an interesting thing. Like, one of the things too that I always harp my husband on about is like, don't you dare make her give someone a kiss and a cuddle.
I know. And it's funny because I grew up with that generation of give Andy a hug.
Like, I'll look at him and be like, don't you dare, because she needs to understand her body. So she wants to give that out, then she should be able to do that. But I would never, I just feel so passionate about that. I'm like, we need to allow children to make decisions that are really important to them. But I love what you said about boundaries. So talk to me about, because it's a tricky balance of being able to allow children to have autonomy, which is what we're trying to create. But why did you say earlier, I have a lot harder boundaries than you think that I would?
Yes. I think and I do think it's the judging the book by the cover that people think, oh, you're so laid back. But I'm trying to think some good examples, but I do joke to friends that she has her Sharpie, big circle, and it's getting bigger. She gets older and she can go wild inside there. But if she goes out of the Sharpie circle, especially when she was little, her booty gets dragged back in fast. And one of the big non-negotiables now for me is social media.
Yeah.
Like, she is on Snapchat and she's not supposed to be chatting. I can't remember what the rule was anymore. It was a couple of years ago, with anybody she doesn't really know, or all her friends are supposed to be from school. And I pay a lot of attention to that, as I'm sure you will, because you kind of work in social media and we know how to navigate it. We know what to look for. But I think it's the keeping safe. When you start from a young age and she realizes, she would say to me when she was little, you're my safe person. I don't know where she got that language from, because it wasn't mine. So she trusts, it's the trust. Now she knows if I tell her not to do something, there's a reason. And I keep waiting for her to push that boundary because it's their job. And she really hasn't yet. She's done the really natural, normal kind of trying to nudge the boundaries thing, but she trusts me that if I say, don't do this, there's a reason.
Yeah. I think that that's so important. And for us as parents, not to say, don't do that because we're fearful of what could happen to them, but say not to do that because I really want you to be able to stay true to who you are, or this could potentially, really impact you. Like, I had a friend who was talking about Instagram and, sending like naked photos over Instagram, right? And if the parent of the other person, even if it's a boy or a girl, doesn't matter, decides to press charges against that kid, right? And it's considered valid, they actually lose their ability to get, in Australia, called a working with children's card, potentially for life, which means they can't volunteer. They can't work as a teacher, a nurse, a police, any profession that would potentially work with children, they can never work with. And so I do think sometimes we have to say to, which is what you would say to Emma, like, the reason why I don't want you to send naked photos to this boy It's not because, well, it's just, there's intention there.
That's my moral sensibility.
Yeah. It's like, because this could like really screw your career up.
And we talked about that. I think it's called David's Law. I can't remember what the law is, but just that you can send a picture of your own topless self to someone and they can press charges against you for sending it. And you're right, because then that makes it, and she was shocked.
It's like having those super transparent conversations. And I feel like now we don't live in a world, the world is so fluid and so open. It's like the conversations that we have to have now have to start earlier.
And it's answering what they ask. I mean, for the longest time, I wondered when she was little, does she know that she's adopted? Because it never came up. And she knew we lived in Guatemala. She knew, but I thought, I'm going to wait until she starts asking the questions. And she didn't have them until so late. I started wondering about that. But recently she said to me, and again, it was another eye-opening moment and not something I expected, that a friend of hers at 12 is having sex.
Wow.
And she said to me, Mommy, she was talking about condoms, which we've done the book kind of thing. And she said, can you show me what one looks like? And honestly, I mean, my first thought as a parent was, no, you're too young. I mean, whatever it was, no, you're too young or whatever it is. And I thought, you know what, if I don't bring my booty to the CVS and buy some and bring them home and look at them with her, she's going to find them somewhere, or she's going to figure this out on her own. And I thought this is happening a lot earlier than I would have thought. But this, to my mind, and I could be naive, is almost what prevents her having sex at a young age. I'm demystifying everything.
It's so interesting you say that. So when I was growing up, my parents were so open with me about sex, like so open. And so I was just like, I remember my mom saying like, honey, if you think it's going to be radically amazing with a young teenage boy, I just hope that you have no expectations. Like, I just want you to know that it's not going to be radical and mind blowing and euphoric because they're so young and they have no idea what they're doing, And so she kind of basically was just like, you can do it, but I just hope that if ever you do it, that you do it with somebody that you love. And so I went through my whole entire university career where everybody was having sex. I didn't have any, because I just was like, I don't really feel like giving that to somebody that's not really going to love, cherish, and adore me. And so when I was 24, I did end up sleeping with my first boyfriend, and that was just a bad relationship. That was fine. But I do remember the first time I had sex, I rang my mom the next day and was like, oh yeah, it was not great. But I think that I didn't go into it as a rebellion. I didn't go into it out of curiosity because I had already kind of figured it out. And I almost think sometimes especially around sex and intimacy, I feel like what we should be teaching women and girls is like, how about you learn your body first?
Yes. Yeah.
Right? Because the act of sex I talk about this a lot. It's like the act of sex itself is actually just really for procreation. Like there's no difference between you and the animal, It's
like your tab A into whole B and you're done.
Yeah.
And my first thought, as terrible as it was, is this girl is 12. And it's not me. Okay, it wasn't my first thought. But later to a friend, when I was sharing the story, telling her what happened, I was like, and it is not good sex at 12. And I know that's neither here nor there. But I started thinking, oh my gosh, on so many levels, it's just so young. And I don't know if the transparency will help. We did, and you brought this up earlier. I started with her when she was little, when she was 7, and we were doing a major move across the country, mother-daughter journaling.
Yeah.
And so that we did at 7 together, because I was trying to get inside her head. So I would come up with questions and write them in the journal, and we'd answer them together, the same thing. Like, who is your best friend and why? What are you scared about with the move and why? And so at least she could see me answer the same thing, and we would each take turns writing and then reading to each other. But now that she's older, and I had hoped it would come to this, and yet I didn't dare to hope that it would turn out like this, that we still have a journal, and she will take it out and leave it on my bed with writing in it when it's something super private. And it's almost like the bubble, because then I'll respond. And there's that trust and awareness that if she shares something with me in the journal, it doesn't leave there. I mean, there might be some situation, knock on everything, pregnancy, something like that, where you're like, okay, this needs to leave the journal. We have to talk about it. But otherwise, it's very much we leave it as the words and we work it out in the words. And it's been shocking me how well it's gone, but I think it's building that foundation when they're little.
It is. And it's really important for them. I think, even like with Ainsley and like our marriage, like with Andrew, like I said to you earlier before we were recording, that marriage has been one of the hardest things I've ever done. Being overtly affectionate with my husband, like so that she can see and model like what a healthy relationship looks like. where there is arguing, but there's also love and affection, and there's redemption and like all the emotions in part of that relationship. I feel like even now there's such a projection that marriages have to look a certain way because of Instagram. And it's like, there's no backstory being shared. But I think one of the things with women that you've talked about with Emma so much is allowing her to embody her spirit the whole time. Like I remember when she was a toddler, she was like, just like Ainsley, dressed up in tutus and pom-poms. And then she'd be dressed up in like, a football uniform the next day. Why has it been so important for you as a mother to allow her to embody who she is at all times?
It's funny because I see all those t-shirts now, which I'm sure you've seen, the having a weird mother builds character. Have you seen those?
Yes.
And I think I am the weird mother, and it's naturally who I am. I think we can sense when people are trying to be quirky. And I just think, there's no other way to be than completely who you are. Nothing in life would be more tiring than trying to conform to a mold. And I just thought she needs to be who she is. It's been interesting to me to watch her become who she is, because again, back to the adoption thing, I don't have anything no ego tied up in it or thinking she should be a certain way. But I love that now that she's older, I keep waiting for her to get really into how she looks. And she is still in that. She was probably more into it when she was younger. She'll sleep in the clothes and she'll wear them to school. And there's something about that I love. She's just comfortable in her own skin. And I think that's the best quality I can hope for with her, because it will make her successful in everything. It's completely disarming for people. You make other people feel comfortable when you're truly at ease with who you are.
You think it's because you are the same?
I don't know.
You are comfortable in your skin.
I am. And I do. It's funny because I had an interview yesterday for hopefully a job that will work out that I'm really excited about. And I said to the guy, listen, you guys skew really millennial. You need to, and then I said, I'm going to use a word and then we'll pretend I never used it because I hate it. But I said, you need to be a little more midlife. And I said, you need everybody to be me, because I'm youthful, but I'm age appropriate. I'm confident, I'm not. And then there's a pause. And then I said, okay, but if you need a list of what I suck at, I can give you that as well. But I just know what I'm good at. And I think that's the key in life.
Yes, it is.
We all know, life tells us daily what we are not good at.
Yes.
But it's being able to identify immediately. With her, she'd say, I am very nurturing.
She is nurturing.
Hangs her hat on that. So she knows like I'm terrible at math, and she's not a rock star at academics, but she'd probably say I'm really strong. She was toddler freaky strong, and she still is. I'm good at gymnastics, and I'm really nurturing. And I think as adults, sometimes we lose that. We should know in a moment's notice, tell me 3 things you're amazing at. And there shouldn't be any hesitation.
There is. And that's why I coach with all day long.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that as women, when we start to embody I would call them our divine gifts or our innate gifts or who we are, we then give our daughters permission to do the same. And I think girls now are searching for what they're good at in sex, in Snapchat, in Instagram, in all of this stuff, because we have never given ourselves as mothers and as women permission to be who we are. So therefore, how would we expect our daughters to?
It's funny. She gave me, I always say to her birthday, Mother's Day, please just write me something. And so she wrote me this card for Mother's Day, this big poster board, a bunch of them. And I read it to a male friend, and he said, oh my gosh, that part where she says, and I love you because you don't care what you look like. And he said, did that just piss you off? And I said, oh no, I love that, because she's right. It's not about the vessel. And she knows that I show up. Of course, I'm appropriately dressed and I'm invited to a fancy place, but I know I'm not. Like just by coming. And he's like, oh, that would have pissed off a lot of women. I said, no, she nailed it. I do not. And she says it to me all the time now. Mom, I love how you don't care what you look like.
I think as women, that has got to be one of the most powerful things we can give to our daughters.
Because it's not about the vessel. And somebody debated with me the other day. He said, you work out, you care about the vessel. I'm like, no, there's functional fitness and I want to feel energetic or whatever it is. But it's about so much more than it's knowing you're enough, whether you're in a hefty bag or whether you're in Tory Burch.
Hell yes. I think at the end of the day, one of the things that through my recovery, and I've been, like you and Ronnie and probably Esther, like people that I think about like online that have really been just even Ashley Stevens a little bit as well, just like really unapologetic about how they live and not conforming. I'm like, if that's what I give to my daughter, if all else, if all else fails and she's just like, I want to flip burgers at McDonald's, but she's so happy with that and she loves what she's doing and she's unapologetic about who she is, then that's what I'd want for her. Like, that's all I ever want for her. And I think once I started to embody that as a woman, which you had figured out a lot earlier than I did in motherhood, like once I started to embody that, I'm like, now when she needs me, I'm so much more connected. You're the same. I'm so much more connected intuitively to what she needs. Does that make sense?
It does. And motherhood is exhausting and it's so hard at the age where you are. And I remember one day she was following me really close. She was like 4. Everything I did, she was walking behind me. And I was at the age where I was a human jungle gym and I wanted to say, stop, like get away from me. And I said, Emma, what are you doing? And she goes, I'm following behind you to learn how to be a woman. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is like the metaphor for everything. I need to remember this because it's, it's memes, it's everything. Little eyes are always watching, but they are. It's like, you don't practice what you don't preach, just practice. And they are paying attention.
They are. The way that you eat food, the way that you love your husband, the way that you rest and relax, the way that you overwork, the way that you diet, the way that you talk to yourself.
With the husband thing, I did wonder when we separated, and there's such baggage there because he's been gone a lot with work. He would travel Monday through Friday. And she said again with the birth mother thing, she said, I'm feeling sad about my birth mom. I have a big hole in my heart. And I had that moment of thinking, because I worry about it, is she going to try to fill it with men because her dad's not around a ton? And she said, I have a hole in my heart where my birth mom should be, but my friends are all filling it. And I thought, oh, that is perfect. That is how it should be. And I think that's something I've really modeled a lot recently, almost by accident, but then more consciously lately, is the whole notion of having a tribe. Because I've leaned so hard on my women friends that she started saying, and not for me, we are rich in friends, like realizing how I need people. Being by myself, I need people. As a human, we need people, but just she realizes how important that is. And drugs, drinking, shopping, compulsively exercising, whatever it is, you lean on those things when you don't recognize it's connection you're craving, because you're connecting to the alcohol, connecting to the thing, when you just need human connection.
Yep. It's so true. And I don't think that even like social media cannot fill that. And we live in a world, I think, as you have navigated the divorce and all of that, or you are navigating the divorce and separation, is we cannot do this alone as mothers. And it's one of the things I've said to Andrew through my recovery, is like really realizing that what I really wanted was friends over for dinner. I really wanted to just have that quick, let's go to the park. And those type of things have been more nourishing for me than anything that I could possibly create online. And I try to, and you do as well online. Like I did an Instagram story about yesterday. I was like, I hate social media sometimes. Like I hate it so much because it's so tedious and it's so blah, but I'm like, if I'm going to be here, then I'm going to be here, like I'm going to talk about how you should know your body as a woman if you're going to have sex. I'm going to talk about the nitty-gritty stuff that nobody wants to talk about, because what's the point of this exercise to be online if I'm not going to show up authentically as myself? Because it's taking time to be myself living in an authentic way.
Yes. And it's amazing how often that really happens, that people really do have the two personas because they feel pressure to. I'm not even judging.
Because it sells, it converts, because people want to have the polished life. And so they buy all these programs thinking that they're going to get the polished life. Like I remember when I was doing doTERRA, I was doing like a doTERRA business training. I think there was like 200 people on it or something. I was like, what the why do people want to learn about it? I was like, what? And I literally was like, all right, guys, listen, you know what? I'm going to tell you something before I even get into this whole menagerie of, all of the tools that will help you build your business. Any business, you do need tools if you're going to do a business. I said, you can quit at any time. And it was just like radio silence, because everyone had gotten into this because they were like lifing it. And I'm like, but why wouldn't you give yourself permission to quit something? We don't give ourselves permission, even as mothers, to go, this really isn't working, or this, I've got to change the way that I mother or change the way that I live. I think if we don't give ourselves permission as women in any facet of our lives to quit something, then we're just doing exactly what you just talked about, which is trying to hold a persona that isn't really true.
And it is that word. It's become so fraught with wrong meaning, because really it's just creating space. And I remember when I was a trainer or doing more coaching, it's that you can quit a good habit that no longer serves you. This same habit might be awesome for Betty down the road, but you're right. People do hate when I say, I'll let her quit stuff. She's a kid. I want her to try new things. And as long as it's not a team sport where she's letting everybody down, It's okay to stop doing something and create space for the new.
Amen. So true. I adore you.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm like, I want to come back every week.
We could talk about lots of things, I'm sure. I mean, there's so much more to you than motherhood. That's just one of the areas I absolutely love about you. I could talk to you about like body image and exercise. I remember one of my favorite things you said was only ever do exercise up to 80% so that you've got 20% left in the tank so that you can push.
That is my life. I said that to somebody yesterday too, and they're like, I don't get it. I was like, if you go balls to the wall, you get up in the morning, you're like, my balls are still on the wall. I don't want to do this again. And it's everything in life, 80%, because then you'll get up craving it. We take the fun out of everything as Americans. We like supersize everything and we make ourselves sick of it. Yes, and I live every day like that with everything I try.
Yeah, I love that. So where can we find you? How can we connect with you? Where can we play with you online?
I am still blogging probably once a week at carlabirnberg.com. I am more Facebook, and I'm working on another book all about parenting, imperfect parenting, and I'm looking for some jobs. I had a really exciting job interview, and so hopefully that will come through. But I'm really pivoting and trying to reinvent myself slowly. I've had a bunch of job offers, and I think it's that notion of we all get two lives, and the second one starts the minute we realize we only get one. And so I'm really trying to enter into this second part of my life and really create what I want and not just an existence. I don't want to live the same day 365 days a year and call it a life.
I know the word that keeps coming to me really loud and clear right now is discernment.
Yes.
Being
so trying to go slow.
But discerning is only when we know who we are. Like we can only discern when we've given ourselves the space to really live in the quiet and the stillness of what our soul really wants, in my opinion.
It's terrifying. It's so scary because I don't have any crutches. I don't drink to excess. It's like I haven't numbed anything during all this process. And so I've cried so much, and I just keep reminding myself, well, I could not cry, but then you only kick the can down the road and the sadness is waiting for you. Yeah. So it's sitting in the end thinking I'm ready.
Mm-hmm. And I think as mothers, as we allow our children to do that, then we start to allow ourselves to do that. If we don't allow ourselves to do that, then we don't allow our children to do that.
Yes.
And we have to allow ourselves to do that. I mean, like, sometimes I say to my coaching clients, because again, it goes back to emotional resiliency, truly. I'm like, I give you full permission to sit in bed and watch 50 hours of Brene Brown, like every video 5 times. And then again, until it sinks into your mind around like courage and vulnerability and emotional resiliency and joy and gratitude, all the things that have been vacuum packed out because we're trying to be something, which is exactly what you've done, is you've given Emma this by being a courageous mom and just flowing through within the Sharpie boundaries.
Yes. And, I used to joke with the literary agent for whom I'm writing the new book, but it's true. She could go off the rails, and good Lord, girl is trying someday, but I would still believe in the tools I've used to get her to wherever it is she went off the rails. I would still do it the same. And I think that's the key for me is no matter what happens, I still believe in what I've done. And I still think in the end, it'll all be fine. Because they all want to go off the rails, and our job as mothers is to keep pushing them back on.
Yeah, I think so. And having those courageous conversations of like, well, why did you do that? Or when you were given the opportunity, smoke a joint, why didn't you do that? Like
Yes.
Help me unpack like why you said no to that when everybody else was doing it, because that ability to kind of change the rudder is more important than if the rudder was changed. It's like, does that make sense?
And I've talked to her a lot about that. I know we need to wrap up, but around the sex and I said to her, because I'm very honest, I never smoked pot in high school. And I've thought a lot about why did I say no? Like from the time she was little, I was super open and trying to figure out why I didn't do it so I can help you not to do it. And so when she said she didn't do it, it's having that same conversation. Okay, you can teach me now. How did you know to say no? And how did you have the courage to say no and not be embarrassed? So you're right. And letting them be the teachers, because we are always the experts. And so she was the expert in that moment of why she said no to the joint from her friend and letting her teach me.
It's amazing when we allow ourselves to ask our children, like I always say, I'm always like, what do you want right now, Ainsley? Like, why are you having a meltdown? What is it that you're really wanting? And just that ability for me to ask that question from her and for her to communicate it back to me is then a lesson for me to ask myself.
And how do you want to handle this? I found myself saying to her a lot now.
That.
Yes, getting her insight on, how she wants to handle a situation that's gone well, that's gone horribly awry. And then I turn it back on myself when something seems to have become a kerfuffle, which is my new favorite word. I don't know if it's really a word, but asking myself, okay, how do I want to handle this? Yeah. I'm capable. How do I want to handle this? Because it's trusting in what she'll say and then reminding myself to trust in myself that I can handle whatever it is.
I love it. So carlabirnberg.com, yep. Carla Birnberg on Facebook, Instagram, the Twitter.
The Twitter's the best.
LinkedIn. And thank you for being a voice of just unapologetic exploration, I guess is the way that I would label you.
And that's where I am right now.
Yeah. Thank you. You are a gem. You give so much out. And I think you open up conversations and say stuff that people are like, yes, 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 yes. And we need to have more of you online.
Thank you for having me. This was so fun. I'm going to come back.
I would love to have you back.
I love that I made it a statement. There's no inflection up question.
I'm like, oh, so you are coming back then.
Yes, I'm coming back. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Thank you for joining me today. If you'd like more information about myself, my journey, my public speaking engagements, or life coaching with me, please head to my website, mishpope.com. If you can kindly leave me a beautiful review on iTunes, I would be forever grateful. I can't wait to connect again in the next episode.